All right, let's dive into a field that's all about compassion organization and helping families through some tough times.
Definitely a unique field.
We're talking about prepping you for a funeral services director interview.
It's a role that really requires a special blend of skills. You're not just planning the logistics of a service, but you're providing emotional support and guidance.
Yeah, and to help us get you ready for all that, we've got RoleCatcher's career and interview guides. I was actually pretty impressed with the insights in these resources.
Oh yeah, me too. They're packed with good stuff.
So before we get to the interview questions, let's just paint a quick picture of what this role actually looks like. What are the core responsibilities of a funeral services director?
Well, you can think of yourself as a compassionate guide for families who are going through a very challenging time. You'll be coordinating everything from memorial services to burial arrangements, handling legal paperwork, and potentially even overseeing crematorium operations.
So it's a lot of logistical juggling alongside the emotional support aspect. That's a tough balancing act.
It is, and it takes a special kind of person to handle it all with grace and professionalism. But, the career guide mentions that with an aging population, job security in this field is pretty solid.
That's a good point to keep in mind. And speaking of giving yourself an edge, we should talk about RoleCatcher's AI. This thing can actually tailor your resume and cover letter to specific job descriptions.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. RoleCatcher's AI analyzes the skills required for the job and helps you highlight your most relevant experience. They can even point out any gaps you might want to address before applying.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork. Now let's dive into those interview questions. I'm ready to be grilled.
Haha, all right, let's do it. I've got some insights from the interview guide about what interviewers are really trying to get at with each of these questions.
First up is, what inspired you to become a funeral services director? It seems pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh yeah, there is. It's not just about giving the right answer. They're really trying to understand what genuinely motivates you and how your personal values align with this kind of role.
So they want to see that I've thought about WHY. I want this job, not just that I need a job.
Exactly. Think about a time when you saw someone handle a tough situation with grace and compassion. How did that impact you? Did it spark something in you, a desire to provide that same level of support to others?
I see what you mean. They want to see that my heart's in it. And I bet a follow-up question could be something like, what are some of the challenges you expect in this role, and how would you handle them?
You're already thinking like an interviewer. It's smart to acknowledge that there will be emotional demands and potential for stress, but also emphasize your coping mechanisms and commitment to self-care.
Speaking of self-care, the career guide mentions the importance of continuous learning to stay up to date. Maybe I could mention my commitment to ongoing education to show I care about professional development.
Absolutely. It shows you're dedicated to providing the best possible care, even as the industry evolves. Okay, let's move on to a question that's bound to come up, and it can be a little tougher. How do you handle difficult or emotional situations with grieving families?
Yeah, this one's heavier.
Yeah.
It's not just about empathy, it's about professionalism and composure in highly charged situations. How do you even prepare for that?
You're right. It's about emotional intelligence.
Mm.
Can you be tactful and respectful in sensitive situations? Can you stay calm and supportive even when facing intense emotions?
So should I share a specific example from my own experience?
That's a great approach. A concrete example makes your skills come alive. Think about a time you supported someone through a difficult time, maybe not even related to death. How did you handle that? What helped you communicate effectively and offer comfort?
I bet they'll be watching my body language too, making sure I'm not just saying the right words, but
Yeah.
that I'm really feeling them.
You're catching on. They're absolutely assessing your overall presence, your emotional maturity and stability. They need to see that you can be a calming presence, not add to the chaos.
So, storyteller with specific examples, checking those nervous fidgets.
Got it.
Got it. What are some follow-ups they might ask?
They might ask about your experience working with families from diverse cultural or religious backgrounds, or how you'd handle conflict with a grieving family member. It's about your cultural sensitivity and your conflict resolution skills.
That reminds me, the career guide mentioned the increasing diversity of the funeral services industry. It seems crucial to show I can work with people from all walks of life.
Right on. Now, how about this one? How do you stay up to date with industry trends and developments?
Finally, a chance to show off that I'm committed to continuous learning.
Exactly. This is where you talk about any professional organizations, you're part of conferences, you've attended publications you read, or online courses you've taken. Don't just say you stay up to date. Show them how.
The career guide also mentions certifications like Certified Funeral Service Practitioner, CFSP. What does that even stand for?
CFSP stands for Certified Funeral Service Practitioner, and then there's the Certified Crematory Operator, or CCO. These certifications show you're serious about your career and that you're willing to go the extra mile.
So these certifications signal I'm invested in my growth. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What kind of follow-up questions should I expect here?
They might ask about a specific industry trend that you find interesting, like, are you familiar with green burials or the rise of personalized memorials? Be ready to discuss a recent development and how it impacted your thinking.
That's a great tip. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. How do you manage the logistics and coordination of funeral services? It seems like there are a ton of moving pieces.
A ton is right. This question is all about showing that you can handle multiple things at once, pay attention to details, and keep things running smoothly in a sensitive environment.
So it's not enough to just say, I'm organized. I need to give them concrete examples of how I've handled complex events in the past.
You got it. Think of a time you coordinated a project with tight deadlines and maybe even some unexpected issues along the way. How did you stay on top of everything? What systems did you use to make sure nothing slipped through the cracks?
I could also talk about my experience with different vendors, florists, caterers, musicians. It shows I can manage those external partnerships too.
That's smart. This role requires lots of collaboration. Highlighting your interpersonal skills and ability to build relationships is key. What follow-up questions do you think they might ask?
I don't know. Maybe they'll ask me to describe a time I faced a logistical challenge and how I solved it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll throw a hypothetical situation at me like, what happens if the hearse breaks down on the way to the cemetery?
Those are good ones. Be ready to think on your feet. All right, let's move on to another important question. How do you approach working with families from diverse cultural or religious backgrounds?
This one feels really important to me.
It is. It's all about your sensitivity, your respect, and your willingness to learn and adapt to different customs and traditions.
So it's not enough to say I'm respectful of all cultures. I need to really understand the nuances of working with diverse families.
You got it. This is where your research pays off. Spend time learning about different cultural and religious traditions common in your area. Be ready to share examples of how you tailor your approach to each family.
I could also mention any training I've done on cultural sensitivity or diversity and inclusion.
Great idea. It shows you're proactive about your learning. Remember, every family deserves to feel seen and understood, especially when they're grieving.
What are some follow-up questions they might ask?
They could ask you to describe a time you had to navigate a custom you were unfamiliar with, or they might give you a scenario like, how would you approach a family who wants to include a specific ritual in the service? Be ready to show you're adaptable and willing to learn.
Okay, good advice. This next one feels a little tricky. How do you balance the needs of grieving families with the financial constraints of funeral services?
Yeah, it's a tough one. This question is getting at your understanding of the business side of things. Can you talk about costs in a sensitive and transparent way? Are you committed to finding solutions that work for everyone?
Right, at a balance. I want to show compassion and a commitment to helping families honor their loved ones, but I also understand the financial side of running a business.
Exactly. Think about how you would approach conversations about costs. What strategies would you use to make families feel heard? How would you present different options in a clear and respectful way?
The career guide mentioned payment plans and lower cost services as ways to help families manage costs. Should I bring that up here?
Absolutely. It shows you're thinking about those practical needs and you're willing to work with families to find solutions. Remember, you're there to help them through this, not add to their stress.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about follow-up questions for this one?
They might ask you to describe a time you worked with a family facing financial difficulties. Or they might give you a scenario like, what if a family wants an elaborate service but can't afford it? Be ready to show your empathy and your problem-solving skills.
Got it. Okay, next question. How do you manage difficult or challenging coworkers or staff members? Every workplace has personality conflicts, right?
Oh, for sure. And in an environment as emotionally charged as a funeral home, it's super important to handle conflict well. This question is testing your interpersonal skills and how you maintain a professional work environment.
So I need to show that I'm a team player and that I can deal with difficult situations professionally.
Exactly. Think of a time you had to work with someone who was, well, challenging. How did you approach that? What strategies helped you communicate and find common ground?
Maybe I could talk about mediating conflicts between coworkers or giving constructive feedback.
Great examples. Those show you can handle conflict head-on and that you're committed to creating a positive work environment.
Mhm.
Okay, what follow-up questions are you expecting?
Maybe they'll ask about a time I had to give difficult feedback, or maybe, how would you handle two employees who are always arguing?
You're getting the hang of this. And be ready to demonstrate empathy communication skills and a knack for finding solutions. This next one might seem a bit strange. How do you approach marketing and outreach for your funeral home or service?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's not like we're selling sneakers.
That's the point. They're looking for your understanding of the funeral industry and your ability to develop marketing strategies that are both sensitive and effective.
That's a tricky balance.
Yeah.
I want to show that I understand the sensitive nature of these services, but also that I have good business sense and can think strategically about reaching clients.
Think about different ways to reach potential clients respectfully. Would you use traditional methods like print advertising and community events? Or would you explore digital approaches like social media?
Well, the career guide mentioned that networking is super important in this industry. Maybe attending events and connecting with other professionals could be a big part of my outreach strategy.
Good point. Building relationships with other professionals like clergy hospice workers or grief counselors can be a great way to get referrals and build trust in the community.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
What could they ask as a follow-up?
Maybe they'll ask you to describe a marketing campaign you've worked on. Or they might give you a scenario like, how would you market pre-need arrangements to a younger audience? Be ready to talk about your target audience, your message, and the channels you'd use.
Okay, I'll come prepared with some ideas. Here's a question that's important for any business, especially one dealing with such delicate matters. How do you ensure that your funeral home or service is compliant with all relevant laws and regulations?
This one's about showing your knowledge of the legal and ethical side of the funeral industry. They want to see that you take compliance seriously and that you're on top of all the rules and regulations.
Absolutely. I need to be familiar with all the laws about funeral homes and crematoriums in my area, licensing requirements, record-keeping environmental regulations. Where do I even begin?
The career guide talked about staying current with changes in regulations. You can mention any professional development you've done to keep your knowledge up to date.
Okay, I'll brush up on the laws and mention any relevant training. What kind of follow-up questions should I expect?
They might ask you to describe a compliance challenge you faced and how you handled it. Or they might say, what if a family wants to scatter ashes in a place where it's not allowed? Be ready to show your knowledge of the law, your problem-solving skills, and your commitment to doing things right.
Okay, I'll be ready for anything. This next question is about the future. How do you approach succession planning for your funeral home or service? Isn't that a bit premature?
Not really. Even if you're not thinking about retirement yet, this question is about your leadership skills and your ability to think strategically about the future of the business. They want to see that you're thinking long-term.
That makes sense. So I need to show them I can think about the big picture and how to make sure the funeral home keeps thriving.
Exactly. Think about the key roles in the funeral home and how you'd identify and develop talent. Would you create a mentorship program or offer professional development opportunities? How would you prepare the next generation of funeral directors?
The career guide mentioned building a culture of learning and development. Maybe I could talk about encouraging employees to get certifications and attend industry events.
I like it. It shows you're invested in your employees and building a strong team for the future. Plus, it shows you were paying attention earlier. What about follow-ups?
What could they ask?
They might ask you to describe a succession plan you've developed or give you a scenario like, what if the owner suddenly retires? Be ready to talk about your vision for the future, your leadership style, and your strategies for developing leaders.
All right, I'll think that through. Wow, we covered a lot. From handling emotional families to marketing strategies and succession planning, it feels like we just scratched the surface.
We did. But don't worry, we'll dive deeper in the next part. We'll look at how RoleCatcher's AI can help you prepare for these questions, and we'll leave you with some final thoughts for your interview.
I'm ready for more. Welcome back. All right, we just went through a whole bunch of those tricky interview questions you might get as a funeral services director.
Yeah.
But now here's where things get really cool. RoleCatcher's AI. It can take your interview prep to another level.
It's pretty fascinating. RoleCatcher's AI is like having a whole team of career coaches and tech experts right there with you.
Okay, you've got my attention. We talked about how it helps tailor your resume and cover letter. But how does the AI actually do that? Does it, like, write them for me?
Well, it's not magic, but it's pretty close. The AI looks at the job description you're going for and picks out the key skills and words that employers want to see. Then it suggests ways to work those keywords into your resume and cover letter so you're speaking their language.
So it's not just using fancy words, it's about making sure my application is really focused on what the employer is looking for.
Exactly. It helps your resume stand out and make sure it gets past those applicant tracking systems that companies use.
So RoleCatcher's AI helps me get past the robots and to a real person. But what about the actual interview? Can AI really help me prepare for those tricky questions we talked about?
That's where it gets really interesting. RoleCatcher has this feature that lets you practice your answers in writing and get feedback from the AI.
Wait, so it's like a virtual interview coach that looks at my answers and tells me what to improve.
You got it? The AI looks for things like clarity, conciseness, and how relevant your answer is. It even flags any potential issues or spots where you might need more details or examples.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So it's not about memorizing answers, but making sure I'm communicating well and getting to the heart of the question.
Right. The AI can help you see where you might be rambling or using jargon or just not answering what they're really asking.
But what about how I deliver my answers? I can write a great answer, but sometimes in the interview I get nervous and stumble over my words. It happens to everyone, right?
Oh yeah, we've all been there. RoleCatcher has a solution for that too. They have a video practice feature where you record yourself answering questions. And get this, you get AI analysis of how you did.
Whoa! So is this like a mock interview with a robot judge?
Yeah.
What kind of feedback does the AI give on the video?
Yeah.
Does it tell me if my outfit is okay?
Maybe not the outfit, but it looks at things like your tone of voice, body language, and your overall presentation. It can even pick up on things like filler words, and tell you how to use them less.
So it's not just what I say, but how I say it.
Exactly. Nonverbal communication is so important, especially in funeral services where empathy and sincerity matter so much. The AI can help you come across as confident, enthusiastic, and genuine, which is huge for making a good impression.
Wow, I'm convinced RoleCatcher can help me tailor my application, refine my answers, and even coach me on my delivery. Is there anything else it can do?
Well, if you're thinking bigger picture, RoleCatcher has a feature called Get Discovered, where employers can actually search for candidates based on their skills and experience.
Wait a minute, so employers can just find me. I don't even have to apply.
It's a way to get your profile in front of companies looking for someone with your skills. Think of it as being proactive, putting yourself out there.
So it's like a dating app for jobs. I make a profile, highlight my best qualities, and wait for the perfect employer.
Kind of. Of course you should still be applying for jobs. But Get Discovered gives you extra visibility and helps you get noticed by the right people. You never know who's out there looking for someone just like you.
Okay, RoleCatcher sounds like a must-have. Does it only work for the funeral services industry, though?
That's a good question. RoleCatcher's AI actually works for a lot of different industries and jobs. They have tons of career and interview guides. You can find resources and AI support for almost any job you're interested in.
That's fantastic. It seems like it could really change the game for anyone who's serious about their job search, no matter what field they're in. I'm definitely feeling better about my interview, knowing I have these tools.
That's great to hear. Remember using the career guide, the interview guide. A&D RoleCatcher's AI gives you a real advantage.
All right, I'm ready to try out RoleCatcher and put these AI tools to work. But before we finish up, what are your final thoughts for our listeners as they get ready for their interview?
We've covered so much today, from the skills you need as a funeral services director to how RoleCatcher can help you ace that interview.
Yeah, it's been really helpful.
We've talked about the practical stuff, but now I want to talk about something a little deeper.
Oh, listening.
It's more than logistics and perfect answers. What does it really mean to comfort and support families who are grieving?
That's a really good point. It's such a personal role dealing with raw emotions and loss. It's so much more than just checking things off a list.
Think about a time when you saw someone handle a difficult situation with amazing grace and compassion. What did you notice about them? Were they a good listener? Did they offer comforting words? Or were they just present in a moment of deep sorrow?
I think those qualities are so important in this job. It's about seeing the humanity in the people you're serving and responding with empathy. It's about being a calming presence when things feel chaotic.
Exactly. And those qualities are important not just for the job, but for your interview too. When you answer those questions, let your genuine compassion come through. Show them you truly care.
It's not just about saying the right words. It's about being sincere and empathetic. It's about letting my heart speak.
Yes, exactly. The interviewers are looking for someone with the right skills and experience, but also someone with the heart and soul to do this work. It's demanding, but it can be so rewarding.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what it means to be a funeral services director.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, you have everything you need to do great in that interview and build a meaningful career in this profession.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new field. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep trying to make a difference in the world.